Welcome back, I'm Rob, and this is the Redmi Note 15 5G. It's going to be released on the 5th of Jan, and on release it's going to cost around about $250. But this got me thinking, a phone for $250 in 2026, how does that compare to a $500 phone from 2025? And then how does that compare also to a $1,000 phone from 2025? Let's find out. So let's start the comparison with the displays. The Redmi has a 6.77 inch display which has a 2K resolution. It has a peak brightness of 3200 nits and it has an adaptive refresh rate up to 120 Hz. In comparison, the Xiaomi has a 6.67 inch display, also a 2K resolution, but a few more pixels. It has a peak brightness of 4000 nits and also an adaptive refresh rate up to 144 Hz. Now the $1,000 phone, the OnePlus 13, has a 6.82 inch display, so the biggest display, a 2K resolution screen once again, but with many more pixels, so once again this is going to be the clearest display. Also peak brightness of 4500 nits, so the brightest display as well, and also an adaptive refresh rate between 1 and 120 Hz. So the OnePlus, the $1,000 phone, is winning the display battle, and also the Xiaomi will come in second, and then unfortunately Redmi will come in third. But for a cheaper phone, I do need to just say once again, this starts at £179, $250, and this still has a 2K resolution display that has an adaptive refresh rate up to 120 Hz. That's still quite impressive for this price range. Now let's take a look at the processors. The Redmi is running a Snapdragon 6 Gen 3 and it's currently on Android 15, which is a little bit disappointing because there's other phones that are from 2025 that are running Android 16 and this is from 2026 and it's still not on the latest Android. I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they might be running a software update in the early new year, which will give you Android 16, but obviously I can't guarantee that, so I have to mention that it's only on Android 15 right now. And I have run a Geekbench score on all three phones. Now, do be aware that they're obviously in the more expensive phones have much better processors because that's what you're spending your money on, but I do want to give you just some idea of how much better these other phones are. So the Geekbench score for single core on the Redmi was 417 and the multi-core score was 1520. Looking at the Xiaomi, the $500 phone, is running a MediaTek Dimensity 9300 Plus. It also has Android 16, the newest Android, and the Geekbench scores for single core is 2172 and multi-core 7270. And for our flagship, the OnePlus 13, the $1,000 phone, it has the Snapdragon 8 Elite, one of the biggest and best chips out there right now. It is also running Android 16, the latest, which you expect. The single core benchmark is 2872 and the multi-core score is 8882. So you can see there is actually a fair jump from a $250 phone to a $500 phone, but there's not much of a jump between a $500 phone and a $1,000 phone. Now let's take a look at the cameras. I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison with all three phones. We're going to show some wide-angle shots, some zoomed-in shots, and just mostly the main shooter. I'll also do some video and also some recording of myself talking so you can hear the differences with the mics. So starting with a selfie from the front-facing camera, you can see from the far left we have the subject, which is me, in shot, very clear, very sharp. The background slightly blurred, but we can see the detail in the sky. It picks up pretty much the whole picture very well. Color accuracy is pretty on point as well. I would say it's maybe a little more yellow in the shot, but overall I like the image. The middle is also very in shot, but also the background is very sharp and in shot too, as you can see the detail with the brickwork. The sky maybe doesn't have as much detail as the first one, but all round, not a bad photo at all. And then the last one probably has the most detail and is maybe my favorite. The background with the sky, you can see all the different details and color differences with the clouds. You also can see me obviously very crisp. I want to say in terms of color accuracy as well, this may be the best in terms of color accuracy, and all round I would say that the last far right is my favorite. But which do you think is which? Which camera and which phone do you think is which image? I'll reveal it in 3, 2, 1. So let me know in the comments if you were right and which one is your favorite out of these three, and just put selfie and a number so I know which one you think is the best. So now we have a Christmas tree, a fairly large Christmas tree, and you can see instantly the middle photo is the richest, it has the deepest colors. This is mostly from processing, but in general, all three photos look great. I want to say the far right and far left look pretty much identical in most ways. The only thing that I'll mention is if you look at the windows in the background, the far left has far more detail. In terms of the middle and the far right, some of the windows are blown out in terms of contrast, where they just basically look white, whereas you see a lot more detail in the far left. Other than that, they are basically identical in terms of the detail. I like all three photos. Like I said, if I was drawn to one of them straight away, it most likely would be the middle one, just because it's richer, but I could obviously mimic that with a filter. And then if I was to pick another one, it would be the far left, just because it has that slight better detail all round in the photo. Now, once again, let me know which one you think is which, and I'll do a reveal in 3, 2, 1. And here we have more of a macro shot. So all three phones basically went into their macro mode or an equivalent macro mode. And I want to say straight off the bat, the far right has the most detail and is mostly in focus. The other two don't seem as in focus, or they're struggling to focus on a particular part of the object. If I was to pick between the two, the middle one I feel is the better looking out of, the two left. But my favorite by far has to be the far right. It just has the most detail, the most that's in focus, and just looks the best in my opinion. But I'd love to know once again what you guys think, and also you to guess which one's which I'll reveal in 3, 2, 1. And here's another photo. This isn't on the macro mode. This is just close enough before it goes on the macro mode, and obviously with the main focus being on the flower. Now, straight off the bat, the far left and far right look like the same image to me. I can't really see many differences between them, so if you do see any differences, let me know, but they pretty much look like the same photo to me. They're so close. The middle is slightly lighter, but in terms of the detail is still there all the way through the shot. So I actually really like all three of these photos, but if I had to pick a winner, I'd probably go far right, but I'm not really sure why. I just feel that the colors are maybe slightly better than the far left, and in terms of the detail, maybe there's a little more there and it's more accurate to the lighting, but all round, all three of them are great. And of course, we'll do a guess and a reveal in 3, 2, 1. Now, looking at some videos side by side, this is me just walking in the snow, walking up to a plant and seeing how it autofocuses, how it handles the color, how it handles the contrast. I want to say the OnePlus seem to struggle here with especially the contrast, where it looks really dark and really blue, and then when I pan up to the plant it then lightens up, and then when I go back it then darkens again. Now, the Xiaomi I feel did the best all round in terms of keeping the contrast the same, the colors, the autofocus it did a fairly good job at as well. I will say the OnePlus's autofocus maybe is slightly better, and the worst autofocus was definitely from the Redmi. The Redmi definitely struggled to autofocus, or was a little bit slower on autofocusing through the video, but all round it wasn't a bad clip. It's just if I was to pick a winner, the Xiaomi definitely has to win because of just the contrast, the colors, and the whole smoothness. And then it will be the OnePlus, which is the only letdown out of the whole thing was the contrast, and then the Redmi would be last. All of these were shot on 4K 30 frames per second. So this is a little test of the mic. I have all three phones right in front of me, so I'm just going to talk for a little bit and switch the audio between all three. In terms of the front-facing camera, at least at this distance, they all look fairly identical. So if I do put them side by side in the actual video, hopefully we'll be able to see if there's difference in the colors, especially in blacks, which are quite hard to pick out for some cameras, and hopefully it'll be quite obvious to see if there is a clear winner in terms of the quality of the video, but also the audio, because if you are intending on shooting a few videos, obviously audio is quite important also. So in conclusion with the cameras, I feel that the OnePlus and the Xiaomi are a bit better than the Redmi, simply because they do have more dedicated cameras. They have telephoto lens cameras where the Redmi doesn't. The Redmi only has ×3, and all that does is it digitally just zooms in on your main camera, whereas the OnePlus has a ×6, which is a dedicated lens, and the Xiaomi has a ×5, which is a dedicated lens. Now all three of them do have ultra wide, but once again the megapixels on the OnePlus are far better and the Xiaomi is slightly better, and of course the Redmi is the lowest. But obviously with the price range it isn't necessarily fair. I just wanted to show you that it's not a massive jump up when you do spend lots of money, but all round you have to say that the OnePlus and the Xiaomi are better, but the Redmi can keep up in some areas, especially as the main shooter is 108 megapixels, so it does have the detail there. Now let's take a look at battery. Starting with the Redmi, it has a 5520 mAh internal battery, and it has fast charging up to 45 watts. It doesn't have wireless charging, but it does have reversed wired charging at 18 watts if you wanted to charge other devices. Now the Xiaomi has a 5000 mAh battery, so a smaller battery, but it does have fast charging wired at 120 watts and wireless at 50 watts. And then the OnePlus has the biggest battery at 6000 mAh and has fast charging at 100 watts wired and 50 watts wireless. And just before we get into the conclusion and round off this video, I'm just going to do a sound test to test all of the speakers from all of the phones. So this is the OnePlus. On max volume. Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Take me back before we blew it all. Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world was at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Too many things going on. I can't keep track of them. So my conclusion of the Redmi Note 15 5G. It has some good strengths like the camera, the 108 megapixel main shooter to be specific, because that can go toe to toe with other more expensive phones, especially for still photos. For video, it's maybe not as good, and also the wide angle is okay, it's passable, but definitely the 108 megapixel main shooter is its strong point. Now, if we look at the processor, yes, in terms of benchmark, it's not going to look as good next to some flagships, especially that have the latest and greatest chips, but it will work for your day-to-day use of scrolling, it will video play, you also can do social media or web browsing, no problem. You won't necessarily feel that it's slow. It will do all those tasks easily. You can also do some gaming on there and have some good experiences with gaming, but it won't be necessarily on the highest settings in terms of detail, and also some of the bigger, more demanding games on the platform. And when we talk about materials, I will say it looks like a flagship. When you hold it, it does feel very comfortable, but it is plastic, so it does feel a little bit cheaper. But on the other side of that, it is thinner and lighter than the other phones in this review. So it's got that going for it. Some more cons that I do want to mention though is when you do get this from new, it has baked in apps, and a lot of them. A lot of games, a lot of Temu and apps like that already baked in and downloaded. And the amount of pop-ups and notifications I got when I first got this are insane. Now, I did keep all of the apps on here for the full test just to remind myself of that part that had so many baked in apps and preloaded apps and all of the notifications. and it was a bit of a nightmare because it felt like it was pinging every 5 seconds. Now, most of those you can uninstall, but not all of them. There are some apps you can't uninstall, but you can mute. So one thing I'm going to be doing straight after this review is deleting all of the apps I don't like and muting all the apps I can't delete to make sure I don't get any notifications that are super annoying. So, would I recommend this phone? It definitely depends on your budget and price range. For a phone of this budget, it does a great job. Like I said, you can technically game on it, do all your social media, browsing, pretty much most apps you will use will work on this absolutely fine with no issues. It also has a decent camera for still photos, which most people I believe take. Not many people do videos necessarily, and you don't necessarily need a good mic for recording videos for most people. They just want to take a quick snap of a shot and that's all they want to do, and with this phone they can do it to a high level. Now when the Redmi Note 15 comes out, it'll have different variants. You have just the Note 15, the Note 15 5G, there is the Plus, there's the Pro, there's loads of different variants of the Note 15. What I'll do is I'll link down below the details and specs when they are released to the pages, all down below in the description, so you can test and look out each one to see if one of them is better than the other for your needs. Overall, that is the review. Hopefully you guys liked it. Let me know your thoughts on the Redmi Note 15 5G down below in the comments. Like and share this video if you haven't done so, and subscribe of course if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you guys next time.